GameStop has been in the spotlight recently in news articles and whatnot, but not for the right reasons, not for the reasons they probably want to be in. GameStop is currently available on the market for sale. The company is not doing all that great, and the most recent CEO actually quit after like 3 months of the job. So obviously there's some issues going on with GameStop, and I know it's cool to hate on GameStop. I know they're a massive company, and I actually worked for GameStop at one point in time. I was an assistant manager there in my early 20s for about 9 months. And I thought it would be this awesome job, you know, constantly surrounded by video games, constantly being able to help people, but there's definitely the business side of things when it comes to GameStop, and there was a lot of things I didn't like. I actually did a full video on that situation back in the earlier days of my channel. I'll put a card up on the screen for it that you guys can check out after watching this video. But yes, GameStop is definitely in a bit of trouble. So in this video, I basically wanted to highlight why I feel like they got themselves in this situation, why I feel like they got themselves in so much trouble to the point of where they could potentially not exist within, you know, the next 5 years or something. And also I want to highlight why I feel that's a bad thing. Yes, that probably seems pretty strange coming from me. You would think someone like me would want to see the demise of GameStop after all the crummy practices they've done for the past 10 to 20 years. But I think there are some good aspects of GameStop that people seem to forget about that sort of get lost in the shuffle. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about why GameStop is in trouble and why I don't want them to go away.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards!
So first up, like I said, we're going to talk about why GameStop is pretty much in the position that they are in, how they got themselves in this position, and I think it's pretty clear to a lot of people why, but I do want to highlight a few things and share my thoughts on them. The first reason, of course, would be the rise of digital. Digital distribution is a lot easier than physical distribution. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's also a very cost-effective way to get your game out there. If you are not a big publisher, you could still be a company on a big device like the Nintendo Switch, the Xbox One, or the PS4 without having to go into a retail outlet. Because, you know, packaging materials, making cases, making discs, making cartridges, making instruction booklets. That's why instruction booklets are not a common thing anymore. It's all a cost-cutting measure. Video game prices have remained consistent. We've been at this $60 price range for a long time now. And of course, the rise of video game costs and development costs constantly goes up, but the games themselves always stay at $60 at a maximum, unless you're talking about collector's edition when it comes to new releases of games. So companies are constantly looking for ways to sort of cut corners and make it more profitable for them. So the rise of digital has had a massive impact on GameStop. And honestly, sometimes I like digital stuff. Sometimes I don't mind the convenience factor of picking up a game digitally. And that comes from someone who considers themselves a pretty hardcore collector. I love physical stuff. But at the end of the day, sometimes the convenience factor of digital just sort of outweighs it. Another thing that I feel really hurt GameStop was buying out competition. You might remember back in the late 90s, you had stuff like FuncoLand, EB Games, Babbage's, Software, etc. In the early 2000s, I remember in the South, there was a company called Rhino Games that was a newer company that was starting to expand, and they were an awesome company. You could go in there and buy the latest games, but they had a ton of retro stuff as well for every system from the NES up until like the Dreamcast, and it was a great variety, and they started to do really well. But whenever these stores started to sort of expand and these stores started to get bigger and bigger, GameStop would come in and buy them out, and that became a problem because what ended up happening was a massive oversaturation of GameStop locations. I'm going to show you guys a picture right now of Philadelphia GameStop locations. This is just in Philadelphia. Look at how many GameStops are within a few miles of each other in Philadelphia, and it's not like Philadelphia doesn't have a mass transit system where you can just go anywhere. So it's like, why are there so many GameStop locations? Because they constantly bought out people. They constantly would get new store locations that they thought they needed, but in actuality, they didn't need it. That's why places like Sears and places like Toys R Us are starting to go under because of this mass oversaturation. Back in the 90s, you didn't have have all this online distribution of games. You couldn't just go online and buy things. The writing was on the wall. Obviously, it was coming because it started to rise up, but these companies never really adjusted to it, and they kept expanding. They kept getting bigger and bigger, and it ended up hurting them at the end of the day because you can only get so big before you're the only game in town. Of course, one of the biggest reasons, though, that GameStop is in trouble is not adjusting with the times and not being as pro-consumer as they like to say that they are. Power to the players is their main game. Power to the players is their main name. But let me tell you guys something. When I worked at GameStop in the back in my early 20s, about 10 years or so ago, it was the strangest thing because they were actually selling retro at the time when I worked there, and they started liquidating it, and all of us were like, why are we liquidating all this stock? You know, this is all used games. GameStop makes most of their money on used games. That's why when you go up to the register with a new copy of the game, they want to sell you a used game, because think of it like this from a business perspective. If you trade in a brand new game, you probably get $25 to $30 for it. They sell it for $50. That is a $20 potential profit on the used copy. But on a new copy, you're talking dollars, maybe even pennies on some of these as far as profit is concerned. So that's why they're always pushing the used copy, because it's better for profit margins. So why would you get rid of all your retro stuff? All of this stuff that you probably got for dirt cheap that of course is starting to go up in price because of what? Space? It was the strangest thing, and they never could really adjust with the times. You start to go in there now and there's Think Geek stuff. Why is there not a program with GameStop with something like Amazon Prime where if you buy a new game, you can get a discounted price if you're a member of a program? They never offered anything like this. The only membership programs they have is on their used stuff that they're actually making the money on already. They just never really got with the times. Now, of course, there's rumors that they're getting into the comic book scene and they're wanting to bring comics. I cannot imagine that comic book sales will really help their bottom line that much. When you look at the price of a comic book versus the price of a video game, what costs more? What's going to bring you in more revenue? It just seems like they're trying to throw things at the wall, and hopefully something sticks. One of the main things that I feel is a big problem at GameStop is just the whole pricing structure of things. I've always been of the mindset where if I could sell 2 games at $30 or 1 game at $50, I would rather sell 2 games at $30 because that will get me a $60 profit as opposed to a $50 profit. A lot of these used prices of games take forever to go down. A game like Ys 8 on the PS4 released last year and it's still like $55 on the PS4 used, and it's like, why? Wouldn't you rather sell more copies at a lower price and get a higher profit margin than just sell 1 or 2 copies at a higher price and not get that profit margin? It's just so strange to me. You would think a company this size would have someone dedicated or a team dedicated to looking at prices of things online, trying to stay competitive so that you can stay alive. It's definitely a company in peril, and it's definitely a company that is in big trouble. But in the same breath, like I said, I don't want GameStop to go away completely. I don't want them to completely disappear off the planet, because I think the ramifications of that could be potentially very dangerous to the gaming industry. Now, I'm not saying that they will necessarily go out of business. A company could come in and swoop up GameStop and you won't see a difference. But I think at the very least, a lot of locations will end up being closed, because any sort of person with a good mindset can see, and especially an investor can see, that there are definitely way too many GameStop locations within other places. But then a company could come in and completely rebrand the thing, get out of the gaming industry. It could be something like Amazon comes in and buys them and just uses it as Amazon Prime locations where you can buy stuff and then it's shipped there instead of being it shipped to a store, or you could pick it up within the store. So it could potentially be the end of GameStop. But like I said, I don't want that. One of the main reasons why is the same reason that I like digital games sometimes, and that's a convenience factor. Sometimes I don't want to wait a day or 2 to get something off of Amazon. Sometimes it's fun to just go to the video game store and look around and pick up the new game the day it releases on the system. It's a lot easier to drive a couple miles than sit there and wait by the mailbox. They are the largest video game chain in the world, let's face it, and the ramifications of them closing could be potentially very dangerous for the gaming industry. Sure, mom and pop stores may see a good rise within the first few years, but still, it's very dangerous because we would sort of have this monopoly where it's only big box locations, places like Best Buy, places like Walmart Walmart and Target that would sell you new video games. And what is one thing that those companies don't really have a strong presence in? That's used games. Sometimes I like to go to GameStop and just thumb through the used games and get a game for a little bit cheaper. It's good to save money. It's nice to be able to trade things in sometimes. While their trade-in prices sometimes are not that great, let's be honest, sometimes they have good promotions, especially when you're trading in something towards something specifically. You could actually save some decent money and get rid of some old crappy games that you don't want or don't play anymore and pick up the latest thing. You don't really have that option at these other stores. It is available, but it's definitely not as simple and streamlined as it is at GameStop. And one of the main things, the main thing that I don't want to happen and why I don't want GameStop to go out of business is simply because you're going to lose a generation of gamers with this, I feel. There's nothing like going into a video game store and just looking on the shelves. I do video games full time. This is my life. And there are still times when I go to a GameStop and I'm looking through like the Xbox 360 or the PS3 or the Wii games or Wii U games. And I'll see a game and I'll be like, I've never heard of this game. What is this game? And it's because they have a used copy of this game. If I go to a Best Buy, if I go to a Target, or I go to a Walmart, I'm seeing the latest releases only. I'm not seeing these old classic games that maybe I'd never heard about. And it's just, I don't know. It's a weird situation because I really enjoy going into a GameStop from time to time. I definitely don't go all that often, but when I do, I always buy something. I always pick something up, or I always learn about something new. And I think taking that away completely, I think getting rid of GameStop completely would just be very bad for the gaming industry. Yes, it's cool to hate on the big guy. Yes, they definitely need to adjust to get with the times. They need better trade-in policies. They need better adjustments on used games. And honestly, some of these stores do need to be closed because there's a big oversaturation of locations. But for them to completely go away, for them to completely go under, I think would be a big travesty to the video game world, because at the end of the day, they are the largest player in the video game world. They are the largest distributor of video games. It is still one of the easiest way to get your hands on video games. And to lose that would just be a shame in my opinion. So those are the reasons why I feel GameStop is in trouble, and that's why I kind of don't want them to go away. And I know there's going to be different opinions on this. I know some of you guys are going to definitely feel differently about this. So let me know in the comments section down below how you feel about GameStop, what you foresee their future being. Do you think a company is going to come in and keep operations as they've been going? Do you think they're going to downsize them, or do you think they're going to completely liquidate them and get rid of them and move on to something else? Let me know in the comments section down below, and thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, my voice usually sounds a little bit better. We had just came back from Too Many Games 2018. Make sure you guys check out that video. It was an absolute blast, but I definitely lost my voice. It was a great time though, a fantastic convention, and thank you for checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications if you're new. Check out all the links in the description box down below. Patreon, t-shirts, social media, all sorts of fun ways to keep up to date with the world of RGT 85, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.
RGT.